UPG is a common, overused, and greatly misunderstood term that is widely bandied about in many Norse pagan, heathen communities. And I'm going to talk about why you should stop making shit up. Hey, I'm Kedrick Olson, author of Runes for Transformation, founder of Galdracraft. For the past 30 years, I've been studying Norse lore in the original languages, looking at it with the mind of a mystic so that I can best pull out the practices that you can use today to make a better life for you and your loved ones in your world. So what is UPG? It tends to stand for Unsubstantiated Personal Gnosis. However, people use it to mean, hey, someone made some shit up. Now, this does happen in heathen circles. In fact, it happens in every spiritual, new age, metaphysical, and esoteric circles. Someone makes shit up. And guess what? Someone is also ridiculed for offering some form of information concerning the gods, ancestors, or other spiritual matters in which another person has maybe no experience, no personal understanding, or maybe they just don't believe it. So they ridicule the person who made this statement, saying, oh, that's just UPG, you're making shit up. And these people who made shit up are told, you need to go look to the lore. And this is a common defense against UPG, is go read the fucking Eddas. But you know what? The Eddas are incomplete. They're inaccurate, contradictory. They were edited and recorded by Christians, and they cannot be considered an accurate source of heathen belief and practice. Let me state that again. You hear someone say, go read the fucking Eddas? Remember that the Eddas are not an accurate source of heathen belief and practice. Period. Sure, the Eddas and the lore helps, but it only gives us a partial picture. We also have to look to archaeology, literature from contemporary people at the time, the people that they had interactions with, the language, the evolution of the language, and even conflicting literature telling us what's forbidden. If all of that sounds like a lot of work, well, guess what? It is, and a lot of people just don't want to do it. It's so easy to just tell someone to shut up because they said something that may not widely be known. Plus, you know what? Modern heathenry has actually become rampant with individuals and groups spouting their own social and political ideology, attempting to justify their beliefs, saying, well, I'm a Norse pagan, I'm also true, so I get to be a dick about your race and your gender and your political affiliation because it's my heathen practice. Bullshit. You see, they're going to counter anything that is opposite to their own social and political narratives, and it gets always hit with a round of ad hominem, including UPG, you're a universalist, fluffy bunny, all that nonsense. Now, throughout my years of study and practice, I do admit that I approach heathenry now from a mystical foundation. Because someone once said that mysticism is the language underlying all religions. And it may be that all of the spiritual traditions have the same underlying subtle language that manifests as ritual practice, worded beliefs, mythology, metaphor, and can be even reflected in our day-to-day behaviors. So to me, studying mysticism means I try to uncover the roots of our beliefs and our connection with a greater world, and then apply that understanding to practices and techniques that get real results. And from a mystical perspective, it helps to bypass the social and political norms thrown at me because I test and validate my results. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I don't care if you think I'm making shit up. It works. Try it. So where does UPG come in all of this? As of this moment forward, we need to come to an agreement that UPG is an outdated term used by people trying to substantiate their own beliefs and practices with closed-minded thinking. Remember, people with the most closed minds have the most open mouths, and they're the ones most likely to tell you you're spouting UPG. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes people do make shit up to make themselves feel good, to fill in the gaps, to fill in the holes in the traditions, and sometimes it is plain flat out deception. Yeah, sometimes people make shit up. However, sometimes that person may actually be onto something. In order to understand that, we really need to dive into what Gnosis really is. And Gnosis, as an authentic term, is a form of sacred knowing. It's akin to divine inspiration, receiving messages from the ancestors or other such beings. Now, you see, necromancy, which is communication with the dead, is a long-standing heathen practice. And if you deny that someone is practicing this art and that they're accomplished at it simply because you think magic is bullshit, then you are discounting a huge part of heathen practice. And as a part of this communication, the person doing the necromancy comes into knowing things that could not otherwise be understood. This deep knowing from sacred sources, including higher self, self or self-mère. This is what Gnosis is, this subtle, sacred knowing. So what about the personal nature of Gnosis? Well, guess what? Every time a person receives or experiences Gnosis, it is always deeply personal. It can really only be understood by that individual in their own way. And you know what? This is a lesson that comes to us from the Rigsthula. Remember, this is a tale when Heimdall disguised himself as Rig, and he visited the homes of people and taught them the things that they needed to know in ways that they best understood. And he was able to communicate with them in the ways that they best understood those things. That's Gnosis, right there in the lore. And guess what? That's personal Gnosis, right there in the lore. So what about the unsubstantiated part? Sure, when a person gets information, it may or not be something in the lore that confirms what they received. Usually it's not. And maybe not, there's some archaeology, linguistics, anthropology that supports the incoming inspiration. Sure. If there is, hey, that's a great step in substantiating the information, right? If not, then it is incumbent upon the recipient to thoroughly test and validate the information they received to see if it holds up in the real world. And if it doesn't, it's bullshit. Move on. But if the information you get from this kind of working does prove itself valuable, then you're incumbent to share it. And so this is my challenge to you. If you do receive Gnosis, a bit of inspiration or whispers from the ancestors, test and validate the information every time. Prove it in the real world, in a real setting. And if you get results for what you received, then it's not unsubstantiated. It works, therefore it's real. Now, one last thing I want to talk about UPG. Many skeptics are going to pull out a poor translation of the Eddas and Sagas to try to refute a statement made by others that they don't agree with. If it's not in the lore, then it's got to be UPG, right? Well, think about this. Everything that is in the lore today was once somebody's inspiration or Gnosis. Are we today no better than the ancestors? Why do we hold the ancestors with such reverence as if they were the only ones that could understand what the gods and other beings were saying and doing? We have that power too. Just think about it. When the first time the Thrymsviska was told, this is the one where Thor's hammer is stolen and he had to dress up as Freya to get it back. Do you really think that the storyteller was there to actually see this stuff happening? Or was his imagination inspired from some source that led to this tale? Same with Odin hanging himself on the world tree to discover the power and origin of the runes. When this was first told, do you think there was some jackass there discounting this tale as pure bunk? Hey, maybe there was. But now we accept this telling as a tenet of heathen practice. But at one time, these tales were spawned by the minds and the imagination of human beings in something that maybe was Gnosis. And they shared their personal experience of these tales, and we've now just come to accept it as lore today. So when this happens in our modern times, who are we to say that the inspiration, the communication, or the Gnosis that an individual received is just them simply making shit up? You are in the right to question and challenge new information, especially if it feels weird or wrong. But you are in the wrong to immediately discount it as bullshit simply because it does not align to your beliefs. So now you are in the position to test and validate information received, especially if you're the one receiving it. But don't spread bullshit simply because it feels good and it seems nice, and especially not to make yourself look better. Make sure it works. Validate it. Then share it with the premise that others should test it too. Then together as a community, we grow, we expand, and we improve our strength, our prosperity, and our wisdom together. Now, if you feel that you've learned well from this presentation and you want more, click like, click share. If you know other people that need to learn this information, because they're out there, please share this video with those people. We're going to grow together as a community by doing this. So hail to you, and thank you.